everybody out there, rock and rollers. Welcome to the 98th episode of the Ugly American Werewolf in London Rock Podcast, brought by your host, the Wolf Mac B. And as always, I will shortly be joined by my partner in crime from the East Coast of the U.S., Gary Action Jackson. And we hope you tuned in last week to our Keith Richards Main Offender episode. I apologize for the sound on that. We recorded that a long time ago. It was before we mastered the art of recording. It was before we were part of Pantheon Podcast, and they've helped us improve our game quite a bit on that front. So I want to give them the due respect, and thank you for listening. I know it was a little rough, but we kind of kept it in our back pocket for a while in case we ever needed an episode, in case there was an emergency, if for some reason we couldn't do a show. We would have that. Well, as we're on the 30th anniversary of the Main Offender album, I thought, well, we might as well just go ahead and release that, get it out there to folks, warts and all, and then we can prepare for Nick Mason's Saucer Full of Secrets. On tour in the U.S. right now, and you know that we're giving away a VIP experience through Pantheon Pods and the Ugly American Werewolf in London. You can get a chance to upgrade your tickets and get a lot of cool free stuff to see Nick Mason's Saucer Full of Secrets. They're out there doing the pre-Dark Side Pink Floyd tunes. It's an amazing show. I saw it at Royal Albert Hall. And I'm getting ready to come back to the U.S. so I can see them in Indianapolis at Close Hall on Friday, October 14th. Now, if you're hearing this, gonna be too late to get the VIP experience to Indianapolis. But if you're in the rest of the country for future dates, you can go to pantheonpodcast.com/Nick Mason and enter to win the VIP experience. Get your tickets upgrade, get your cool laminates, get your special guitar pick made out of Nick Mason symbols, which is really cool. And then go to the booth. Not only by the merch booth will you find the cool Nick Mason gear, but you'll be able to meet a Pantheon podcaster. And if you're coming to Indianapolis on the 14th, you can meet me and Action Jackson, and we'd love to meet you. We can't wait to hear how you found Pink Floyd. If you listen to our show, why you like it, why you don't. Let us know. We want to meet you. We want to know if you like our show. We want to know how much you love Pink Floyd. We want to know what this show means to you that night. And maybe we'll even talk to you, get you onto one of our shows. That would be fun, wouldn't it? Of course it would. So thanks to Pantheon Podcast for helping us sponsor Nick Mason. And you can listen to us speak with Guy Pratt and Gary Kemp of the Rock on Tours and of Nick's band on episode 96. You can also hear me review the show from Royal Albert Hall in London. That's episode number 75. But be sure that next week's show, number 99, is going to be all about the review of the show we go to in Indianapolis. And I want to give a shout out to our other Pantheon brethren and sisters out there, like Christy Alexander Hallberg from Rock is Lit. She had us on her most recent episode talking about Dazed and Confused and some of the rock and roll soundtracks that we've loved over the years. Big shout out to Jay Scott at The Hook Rocks, as I'm going to be in Chicago for one night. My boy Jay is trying to hook me up some pizza recommendations for me and the Wolf Cub. Thank you, Jay. Big shout out to Paul Stevenson of Vintage Rock Pod. Great guy, and This Day Rocks. He's got an amazing voice. He's got killer, legendary guests on, and is a wonderful guy. And of course, to the guys who we've admired for years, and that's Tom and Zeus of the Shout It Out Loud cast, the number one KISS podcast on the planet. All of our Pantheon brothers and sisters, we love you. And I need to give a special shout out to RareVinyl.com, because Rare Vinyl is our sponsor. You never want a better sponsor as a rock and roll podcast than RareVinyl.com. They've been doing it almost 40 years. They have over 250,000 items in stock, from your vintage first print records, CDs, LPs, singles, tour programs. Check it out. They ship all over the world. They've been doing it for decades. And if you use code PODCAST, PODCAST, you can get 10% off not only your first order, but every order you make through rarevinyl.com or EIL.com going forward. So check it out. You're a Nick Mason fan, you want a rare Pink Floyd disc, you can find it on there. Or if you're a big Ronnie James Dio fan, you want to get that original Elf LP that has him in makeup on it. You want to get some of the old Rainbow first edition LPs or the original Black Sabbath. I know Black Sabbath is going to re-release, make a 40th anniversary of Heaven and Hell and Mob Rules stuff. But that's what we're going to be talking about on this show. This week, we finally got to see Ronnie James Dio's Dreamers Never Die. It was a biopic documentary, kind of chronicling his life from the time he was a little kid in upstate New York, and then becoming Ronnie and the Red Caps, becoming the Electric Elves, and then the Elves and Elf, and really leading through his whole career in life. You know, he's an amazing man with the most powerful voice. And really, I think the story is about Ronnie the man and how many people really loved him. That's what I got out of this picture, is that people loved Ronnie James Dio, not just fans, but his fellow artists. He was like the Pied Piper or the Godfather or the Sunset Strip to all those hard rock bands from the 80s. They worshiped the guy just like the people in the audience did. So it was a great movie that really chronicled his whole life, had some great stories from musicians, from producers, from friends, from Eddie Trunk, from writers like Mick Wall, who helped write his autobiography with Wendy, his wife, after he died. I just love Ronnie James Dio. I love his voice. Once I discovered his talent, I was upset that I didn't know him earlier, and why haven't I listened to all of his stuff. A rare talent. He's been dead for about 12 years now. I'm just so glad that this film came out, got the treatment that he deserves. And it was one night only. I saw it in Amsterdam. Jackson had to see it down in North Florida there in one night. I wonder if that really makes them money. I don't know. I guess it's the rarity of it. It's only one night, so people have to go that one night. Seems like if you did it for 1 week or 2 weeks, you could get more people in there. But I'm not in charge of that. All I know is I enjoyed the film a lot, and I think you will too. And I hope you enjoy listening to our take on it. So why don't we do that now? Why don't you listen to me and Jackson going in depth on the movie, One Night Only, Ronnie James Dio, Dreamers Never Die, right here on The Wolf. What do you think about these one night only event movies?
Well, if you get the information, you get to go see them. They're great, but it kind of stinks that there's only. I'm glad that they had it on. I think it was Thursday and then a Sunday, because wasn't super convenient for me to go, but I worked it out on a Sunday.
I just wonder how it makes money. I mean, to be honest with you, they've got to make the films, right? They got to ship them to the place. And then you go in there. I mean, my place was fairly well packed. There were empty seats. You could have gotten one the night of, I guess, but it was pretty packed. But that's, I think, because you could only go once. I wonder if you ran it for a week or something like that after work time at 2 or maybe 3 times for a week, would it do better than the 1 or 2 nights only thing?
Yeah, I don't know. Mine was pretty. I mean, it wasn't a super big theater. I think they actually probably made this for something like this. Okay. There weren't that many empty seats, but yeah, I would agree. How many people just said, it's only once, I'm not going to go. Forget it. I'll just wait till it comes on. I can get it streaming, or somebody will put it up on YouTube or something, or I can buy it for $4 and watch it.
Gotta be a DVD by Christmas is my guess.
Right. Now, they did have a little. I mean, did you stay all the way to the end?
So I did, because at the very end, after the credits, they had some extra stuff there.
Mm-hmm. Correct. Which was, it was interesting. And I'm glad that I stayed, because something was telling me, I think maybe I knew that, but as they were playing some music over the credits, I'm like, I'll sit and listen to this. And it's like, and now exclusive theater content. I'm like, ooh, I'm glad I stayed.
Well, the fact of the matter is I'd had a few beers at that point, so I was ready to go relieve myself of those beers.
Alrighty.
But the fact of the matter is nobody was moving. Usually when the credits start to roll, some people stay through the bitter end, but there's usually some people like, all right, let me start getting my coat, or start getting my stuff together. And I knew something was up because nobody moved a muscle. Still halfway through the credits, I'm like, all right, well, this must have like a Marvel end of the credits. There must be something coming up here, So, but I mean, before we get into the picture, I guess you never really got to see Ronnie play live, did you?
Unfortunately not, no. And they did show some clips of the Heaven and Hell tour with the Black Sabbath guys, and it looked incredible. And so I'm sad that I never got to do that.
Yeah, I did get to see a couple of those nights of Heaven and Hell, at least 2 that I can recall. I remember when they went to Radio City Music Hall, and I remember I almost bought tickets to that show because I'm like, this is special, and I want to go see it as many places as I could. I saw it in Cleveland, and I saw it in Cincinnati, and I was like, man, maybe I should just go to Radio City, be able to say I saw them in New York, and that would be cool for them. But it didn't happen. I also got to see him in Dio, just as a headlining tour, like a summer amphitheater tour.
Okay.
But he was the middle act, and the opening act was Motorhead, and the headline act was Iron Maiden.
That's a lot to process in one day.
It was awesome. It was so cool. And Craig Goldie was back in his band playing guitar for him again, who was in the film. Mm-hmm. And I didn't realize that he'd had such a hard scrabble upbringing. But I mean, a lot of these heavy metal guys, I mean, that's kind of, they couldn't become boxers and become heavy metal guitar players, right?
Yeah, and I think that the one thing that he was talking about was, just kind of that as a kid or as a young adult, you just feel so isolated. You don't know where to turn to. And then all of a sudden you get this message in this song that you're like, yes, somebody gets me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You're the last in line.
Right.
Yep, that's
correct.
me.
Yep. That's me. And I'm in my car, and yeah, maybe you're drinking a couple beers and maybe you're smoking a little weed. I wouldn't recommend it, but hey, that's life. And yeah, you just get this thing where you're like, yes, this person gets me. I feel connected to this song. I'm not alone.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's kind of what heavy metal is, I think, all about. I mean, it's for those who are considered to be also rans or who are marginalized in society,
Mm-hmm.
usually come from hard working class or lower class backgrounds. And it gives them a little something to, I don't know, to hang their hat on, like this is mine and these are my people, and give them some anthems, to get them through what's some hard days in life.
Right. And I think the other nice thing too is that it's not, I mean, I know like the first record, Holy Diver and Rainbow in the Dark did get some airplay. And I mean, that was sold pretty well, but a lot of metal stuff does not. So you feel like this is my own thing. Not everybody knows about this.
Right.
So it's my personal, and if you're cool, you know about it. But Johnny Top 40 doesn't know anything about this music.
And it was just interesting to see how obviously, when he was starting off in the 50s, I mean, that's the thing. And Sebastian Bach was, hey, could you believe it, man? This is a pre-Ronnie James Dio, pre-Beatles, and I'm like, yeah, that's absolutely true.
Now, one thing I would like to point out is whoever did this film, it's hilarious because it was Sebastian Bach, I think it says rock singer, huge Dio fan in his credits. And yeah, it was crazy to see him in that 50s getup. And he actually sounded, I mean, if he'd have stayed with that, he'd have probably made a pretty good career in the Tom Jones, who was the other one? Engelbert Humperdinck genre. Because he had the voice to do it.
Well, absolutely. And he had the determination. And, he took his band out all over, upstate New York and even, down in the South some, all around up in New England. He worked, he got out there and did his thing, and it's amazing how over time, how he continued to meet all sorts of people. And then, but for whatever reason, it never happened for him, right? The recording thing never really happened for him throughout the 60s. He did lots of different 60s stuff. He would mix things up through the 60s. Of course, there was the horrible accident with the van that I read about
that story before.
Yeah.
I had never heard that story before, but that really shows, determination of, I can't remember who the other guy was in the band, but he was like, are we going to do this again? He's like, we are absolutely doing this again. Okay, let's go.
Yeah. Had a friend die in the accident, had to bring a guy back into the band. It's like, nope, we're going to keep doing this. And, and eventually they became the Elves, and then they just became Elf because they were all kind of short anyway. They played this kind of mystical music. And the music of Elf is interesting. I guess I got into Rainbow in college.
Okay.
I was studying in England for the summer. And I don't know, I wanted to get into bands that were big in England, but maybe hadn't been huge in America. And they had this like double disc Best of Rainbow that had all three lead singers, like all the songs from over the years, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it had Stargazer and Man on the Silver Mountain and, Catch the Rainbow and all that stuff on there. And it was like, wow, his voice is super powerful. And then, they had Since You've Been Gone on there. I'm like, yeah, I remember this is a hit, but I can't believe he did this. But but what was interesting about that was, so Roger Glover, legendary Purple bassist, songwriter, producer, was also eventually in Rainbow after Ronnie left, because basically Elf, I think, had gotten some good spots to open for Deep Purple. And they played for some big bands. I mean, they went from playing like clubs to straight to arenas, right? Opening for some of the big bands. So they play with Purple. That's how they meet the legendary and mercurial Ritchie Blackmore.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the movie kind of just confirms stuff that we've heard about Blackmore for a long time. Like he did not travel with the rest of the band. Like, you didn't just go talk to him, and he stayed at a different hotel.
Yeah, and it was interesting because they did it in a way that was very matter of fact. Like what he said, he was the Deep in Deep Purple. Like he just did his own thing. He wasn't very friendly, but like I said, not in a mean way. Just like that's how he was. He didn't eat with the band. He didn't hang around with them. He didn't stay at the same hotel, and that's got to be a really really weird dynamic when it's like, okay, hey, Rich, you want to, okay, I guess he's leaving. Okay, cool. Well, I guess maybe we'll see him tomorrow then.
Right. Yeah. Hope he shows
Oh,
up.
and he
he
wouldn't get dressed with them either. He had his own dressing room. He had everything was separate. Like, that's
right.
really strange.
Back when nobody had separate dressing rooms, like Jimmy Page and Robert Plant were in the same dressing room. You think they'd have space. No. Ritchie had his own thing, so he was the governor, if you will. Especially after he left Deep Purple, and I think the first record said Ritchie Blackmore's Rainbow on it. Right?
Correct.
I mean, yeah. So.
Make no mistake.
Right. Not to mention, I think he just took Elf, ditched their guitar player, and said, now it's called Ritchie Blackmore's Rainbow.
Yeah, and I didn't know that either. I didn't, because it was pretty much exactly the same band.
Yeah, and then it took a while, and then it changed shape, and he started to recruit other people in. Who's in Deep Purple now on the keyboards? Don Airey. Don Airey was eventually in there. Don played with Black Sabbath, and I think Ozzy and Deep Purple and Rainbow. Like he's got the quadruple, like the heavy rock of that era. He was in all of them. He may have been in Whitesnake for all I know. In fact, I'm pretty sure at some point he was. So he did a heavy metal keyboard player. Don Airey's your guy. But, and eventually Cozy Powell, gets into the band. And, but what was funny about the Roger Glover thing is Ritchie apparently really wanted to break into the top 40. He really wanted that big American hit, big American fame, big American record sales. Mm-hmm. And so he wanted that big crossover hit. And, Since You've Been Gone is a song that I think Russ Ballard, who's written for a lot of people, including our buddies Kiss, written tons of songs over the years. He had that song. And Glover was in the studio one day and he was like, Ritchie's thinking about doing this song. He's like, no, he is not. Are you serious? There's no effing way. But not only was Graham Bonnet now in the band, but then in the video, you see Roger Glover there playing the bass. I don't know if they needed a bass player and he was happy to fill in. I don't know if he's like, okay, Ritchie's finally going to get his American hit, so I want to be a part of that. Mm-hmm. It just seems like if he was that, I can't believe he's going to do that. But then he's in the video.
Right.
Or on the song, that's interesting, Roger. That's interesting to me.
And that had to be a real interesting deal for Rainbow fans when you crack that one open. You're like, this isn't anything. This isn't even the same band. It doesn't sound the same. This is, we're looking for the AOR stuff and Ronnie's gone. I think they kind of always had that problem from then on. You really never knew what you were going to get from a Rainbow record.
Well, so was it that Ritchie just wanted that hit so badly and Ronnie's like, nope, not going to do that. I want to sing about dragons and wizards and stuff like that. And it's like, I've been doing this too long to compromise at this point. Because, by the late 70s, Ronnie's in like his mid 30s, whereas Ritchie's not that old yet,
So I don't know. But what the common theme that ran through the whole movie is that you can't fight human nature. Like things are going to go south. I really wonder if at that point in time, even though that's what Ritchie wanted, he wanted his own band. He wanted rock stars. Is now Ronnie the star in this thing? And he's like, well, this is really my band and I'm in charge. And so maybe we need to go a different direction. Did he know that Ronnie would leave or was he hoping that he would leave? I don't know, because I got that feeling. And then I got the feeling later on that was exactly the same thing that happened in Sabbath.
Well, according to the movie, it said Ronnie never got any royalties from Rainbow until after he died.
Right. Correct. And I found I felt bad, but then I'm like, that's the record business. The record business has been screwing people over for years on that. And I don't know if that was the record business, if that was Ritchie. It probably was Ritchie. And then they must have had a court case or something. He wouldn't just give up money.
Right, of course, right. So, I think it was Ritchie and the record company's like, okay, yeah, we've got the big talent. Ritchie, he gets the money. It's fine. It's his corporation. He can hire his minions to play on his records, right?
Right.
And Ritchie's always been, this is his reputation, is he's very hard to work with and he's not a very nice character. And so, Ronnie basically goes, I've got this nice paycheck. We're touring. We're doing all this stuff. And then boom, it's over. And then he was fortunate enough to run into Tony Iommi, I guess, in L.A. Being in L.A. in the late 70s and the early 80s would have been awesome for us, man.
I was thinking that the whole time, like, oh my goodness, to just be a fly on the wall. And I don't know how this is going to happen. Somehow, some way, we need to get to the Rainbow Room together and have a drink there, because there's so much history there. But the crazy part is you got to think about, I was like, okay, yeah, if this was the late 70s, early 80s, there is no email, there's no social media. There's like, yeah, you literally just run into somebody at the club. You knew that was the place to be. You go and you're like, oh, hey, do you know so and so? He's sitting right there. Let me go introduce you.
Right.
So he met Tony Iommi and his wife there.
That's right. That's right. I have actually been to the Rainbow, and right next door is the Whiskey, of course, where I did meet Carlos Cavasso, tell him how awesome he was, and his girlfriend. We'll call her a dancer. I think was probably her profession. Right. It's my best guess.
Anyway, just a guess, right?
Yeah, just a guess. Judging by her build and her attire. But anyway, maybe a model would be a better, I don't know. Anyway, they're both very nice. It was so cool to be there. It was, and that's what I'm doing. I'm sitting in the Rainbow afterwards going, I can't believe it. You know, I wonder if Lemmy's down there, because he was still alive back then. Like, I wonder if Lemmy's downstairs playing video poker right now, man. This place is unbelievable, you know. Just part of history that you can go soak up a little bit of, you know. It's still there. It may be different, and there's still rock and rollers around. I mean, that's the thing. It didn't become, oh, well, now it's pop stars, you know. It's Maroon 5. Though they're going to fill up. No, it's still real rock and rollers.
Well, they had that scene with Wendy there, and she was talking about something, and they said once they cut, they turned the music back on, like just whatever was going to, like, you know, satellite or whatever. And Ronnie came on, and, you know, she kind of got joked up, and I'm like, man.
It was a great film. I thought it was very well put together. I thought the folks that they had in there were very good. Of course, you knew Eddie Trunk was going to be in there, who talks about being best friends with Ronnie all the time. Always great to see Glenn Hughes in there talking about how much he likes Ronnie, and we talked about Sebastian Bach.
It was cool to see Rob Halford too, because it's somebody who was his contemporary, who was really a big fan of his.
That's right. I mean, had nothing but praise for Ronnie. Correct. And joking about how, you know, he's singing about leather and stuff like that. Ronnie's singing about dragons and stuff. It's like, we should have switched.
Although that was interesting with that, and we're skipping ahead a little bit here, with that stars, we're all stars, or hearing aid or whatever, the scene where Halford is recording and Ronnie has that look on his face and he just says, do it again.
Right.
Like,
you can do it better.
Oh yeah. Like that was, I mean, so it showed you the reverence that Halford had, but also, like, and they've touched on it a couple times, how Ronnie was a really, really nice guy. He was really he was really giving with his time, very kind, but also 100% an insane perfectionist.
Professional, yeah, that's
either
right.
It's either it's going to be perfect or we're not doing it, and I'm not accepting this, so do it again.
Right, and you know, he may have smoked a pot, you know, during his days, but it doesn't sound like he got into cocaine, which in the 70s and 80s everybody was doing. Right,
that's what they're saying. Like the 80s, LA rock scene, yeah, like there was just cocaine everywhere.
Everywhere in the 70s, yeah.
This is Sunny Hollywood Pooney, and you are listening to the Ugly American Werewolf in London Rock Podcast. Why? Somebody has to.
But all right, let's try to keep it a little bit. I mean, obviously we skipped over some of his childhood growing up in kind of upstate New York and stuff like that. But look, I mean, I've read his book, you know, and that's pretty heavy on that stuff. And it really only goes till, 1986 or 7 when he sells out Madison Square Garden. Like, that's the end of the book, because Mick Wall, who was in the picture with Wendy, you know, had to kind of finish the book with him, and it took them quite a while after his death to do so. But yeah, okay, so he's out of Rainbow, and then he gets into Sabbath, and he's going to retool Sabbath, and they make Heaven and Hell.
Well, now, hold on a second, because I want to back up for just a minute, because I thought it was interesting when he said to Wendy, I'm not really feeling this. And she said, we have $800 in the bank.
Right.
You're gonna love this song. So it just showed you that at that time, I mean, he had been a star. He'd been in a big band that sold records, but he didn't have any money.
That's right.
So
you come off tour. And the thing is, they didn't overcharge for tickets back then. Like, a ticket was $5.25 and you saw 4 bands, you know?
Yeah, because that was back in the days where you made money off of records. That's right. The only reason you were touring was to sell records. And if you don't have royalty rights to those records, yeah, it's just the paycheck.
Right. And that's what he got from Ritchie.
Yeah.
So then he gets into Black Sabbath. They make Heaven and Hell, which to this day is still about, God, it's about my favorite heavy metal record of all time. If you say, you get to listen to one heavy metal record a day, what is it? And it's the only one you get this month? That's probably going to be it. Heaven and Hell, start to finish, no clunkers, perfect 8-song heavy metal classic.
And that's one thing that Eddie Trunk pointed out, is that the original Ozzy stuff is trailblazing. It's iconic, but Heaven and Hell is just phenomenal. It beats out anything they did in the early days just because of you figure they had been together for a while, they're right, and they got this new guy who, I love Ozzy. He's got a great voice, but it's nowhere close to Ronnie's.
Well, it's not the same. Ronnie can sing anything. He's got a much bigger range. Ozzy kind of sings along with the beat and, with the riff, is he alive or dead? Sabbath, bloody Sabbath. He's got some good stuff, but certainly by the end of the 70s, he was in rough shape.
Go back to your cocaine.
Wasted all the time. Can he come in? He can't write anything. Can he read it? We can't even get that out of him. Then what kind of shape's he going to be in? You certainly couldn't take him on a long tour or anything.
Right.
So they had to axe Ozzy. They get the new guy in, and he steps it up a notch. And the Heaven and Hell record is fantastic and very well received. But Bill Ward is beside himself. Ozzy was his best friend. He missed him terribly. He thought they had done him wrong. They were supposed to be 4 guys from Birmingham. Now they've got this American bloke in here, great singer and everything, but it's just not the same dynamic for him. So plus he was, white line fever. Oh my goodness. Bill Ward had serious cocaine, as did Tony, as did Geezer, but apparently not Ronnie. And so they had to replace him with Vinny Appice. And it was great to see Vinny in the movie. He was awesome in the movie.
Yeah. And it's somebody who I just, as soon as he came on and started talking, I'm like, oh my goodness, we would have such a good time talking to this dude, because the amount of stuff, the amount of stories that he could tell, the amount of situations he's been in that we would love to hear about is just fantastic. I love when he was he got in the band and he's asking Ronnie, what are they saying? I don't understand what Geezer and Tony are even saying. Wait, are they even speaking English? What is this?
Blimey. What's blimey, man? It was funny. Now, Hangin' and Bangin' podcast, also on Pantheon Podcast, is Carmine Appice and Vinny Appice. So maybe we could talk to Vinny one day, and certainly we would have to ask him all sorts of stuff about Ronnie. But he apparently loved Ronnie. They make Mob Rules, which is also an awesome album. It was actually the first one of the Ronnie James Dio Black Sabbath series that I owned and listened to back to back. Mm-hmm. So I had that before Heaven and Hell. Now, as we said on our episode, I believe it was 13 on the Dio years of Black Sabbath, Mob Rules is very, very good. Awesome stuff. It's kind of Heaven and Hell Part 2, though.
Yeah.
It's structured the same way. It kind of has the same come out and hit you in the mouth track. It kind of has the same mellow tracks. It's great. I love it a lot. And it was introduced to us through the movie Heavy Metal back in the day. But so they do these back to back, and then they did the Black and Blue tour, I think with Blue Oyster Cult, where they toured America, and whoever would close based on who was more popular in that area, which was really a thing back in the day.
Yeah, that makes sense, because you want to sell these tickets, so it makes sense to put the regional, heavyweight in
there. Yeah, right. And then they do Live Evil, the live album, so we get a taste of not only what they sound like live, which is fantastic, but then obviously Ronnie's doing some of Ozzy's old tunes. They've got to do NIB and War Pigs and stuff like that. And you have to do it differently, but stick to it, in some sense. I think he delivers the classic Sabbath stuff very well on Live Evil. The new stuff, his stuff with the guys is great, but to get a flavor of doing some of those old Ozzy tunes, I think makes it really just a killer, one of my very favorite live albums, just because it's got both sides on it.
Yeah. And I think it's one of those things like, the Van Halen days where he can sing everything. Ozzy cannot, would no way he would touch anything that Ronnie did.
No way. No way. And Ronnie James Dio is to Sharon Osbourne as Vivian Campbell is to Wendy Dio, basically. They're just thorn in their side that they have nothing nice to say about.
Correct. But I think at this point in Black Sabbath, we go back to what happened in Rainbow. I think Tony's now starting to get butthurt that he's not, I built this band for 10 years and this guy comes in, but that's what you wanted. You wanted this guy to come in and light it up. You wanted him to reinvent the whole thing, to make everybody forget about the original guy. And now you're going to be upset because, oh, well, no one's paying attention to me anymore.
Right. Ronnie's on the cover of all the magazines and all the articles, and it's like, well, yeah, because he's the singer. I'm sorry, that's the way it works, especially in America. The singer is center stage, and he's new, right? And he's replacing somebody that people knew for a long time, But it was interesting when he kind of, in the picture, they said it was at that time joining Sabbath that he talked to somebody about, I've got this nice transition to go from Ozzy to me, because Ozzy did basically the peace sign, the Richard Nixon everywhere, right? And and Ronnie can do the Malloy, which is, we call it the devil horns or whatever, but that's kind of where it started. It's like, so I'm still doing a hand gesture to the people, but it's my own.
Right.
It's not just me doing Ozzy, but it's kind of a continuation of a theme, I guess.
Yeah, that's what he said. And I never knew that. And I think one of the things was that he mentioned, obviously everything that was in there was archive stuff, but he mentioned the fact, like, did I invent that? Nah, I wouldn't say that I invented it, but I made it iconic. I'm like, I would definitely say that, because I know there's all, like, if you go back and look at, what is it? I think it's Love Gun. In the cover of Love Gun, Gene is doing the two horns with his hand. So it's like, did he invent? I don't know, whatever.
No, but doesn't Gene have his thumb out though?
It's close. So I'm taking the Sebastian Bach road and say I'm not going to get in the middle of that.
Right.
Between the two of them, but I would say that Ronnie definitely made it. He made it his own.
All right. Yeah, I'm going with Ronnie on that one. Sorry, Gene. You've invented everything else, right?
I invented that.
I invented stage lighting.
That's right.
I invented dating share. So, all right. So once again, things start to crumble. And I think it was the mix of Live Evil that really started to break the camel's back there, right? It was like
That's what it sounded like. Yeah.
Ronnie would come in and remix stuff that Tony wouldn't let him do. And the next day, Tony would be like, what the heck is this? This isn't right at all. So like, all right, well, this isn't working out.
Which must have been an absolute joy for the sound engineers, because you think you've got this. And they're like, no, it's all wrong. Do it again. Okay. And then the next person comes in and tells you the exact same or the exact opposite.
Right.
All righty.
Yeah. Pain in the butt. That's for sure. So he's like, you know what? I've been doing this a long time. I've now had some success. I'm going to go make my own band. Vinny, you want to come with me? He's like, yeah, sure. Okay. Gets Jimmy Bain in, and then they get the young hotshot shredder from Ireland, one Vivian Campbell.
Correct. And the funny part about this was, I guess he called Jimmy to ask him who he should hire. Do you have some names? And Jimmy was like, yeah, you need to get this kid Vivian Campbell. And when do I show up? When do we start recording? It's like,
just assumed he was part of the band.
Yeah.
Right?
Did I say that you were hired? But okay, cool. Come on board. But yeah, I guess he was just like, yeah, let's do this. So yeah. And here's where the movie kind of takes a turn for me.
Okay, this is what I was waiting for.
Yeah, because the only Vivian Campbell stuff is archive stuff from different interviews that he did. There was nothing new for this. And I've heard the story both ways, or I've heard two different versions of the story. And it would have been very interesting to get his take now, because I think that they mended some fences before he died. I think that was the case, but I would have a hard time believing that Campbell mended anything with Wendy. I think she doesn't like him at all, and that's why he wasn't in the movie.
That's right. You talk about everybody who loved Ronnie James Dio and how he's kind of like the Pied Piper of all these young hard rock acts in L.A. And it's not just, about, hey, let's go get chicks, or, hey, what are we going to score? It's, are you doing your best? What can you be doing, to get better? And you see like Don Dokken, talking about how he wasn't just out to like party and stuff. He wanted to make sure we were all on the right path to success and stuff like that, which made for pretty good stuff in the movie. But here you get to the point where, yeah, not everybody likes Ronnie. And, Tony Iommi, obviously they had a breakup. Geezer had a breakup. Bill Ward, eventually broke off from him. But they're all in the picture. And Vivian isn't.
No.
And he's not gonna be.
No.
But it was good that they had so much in it. And I read some stuff that, Vivian's done some interviews since this came out. We have to first say, look, they did, he did an amazing job with these first few albums. These first solo albums, I guess you would call them solo. It's Dio, but Holy Diver is double platinum in the U.S. and it was big time. And then you do The Last in Line the year after, 1984. It was also platinum. And then you go to Sacred Heart. You got this type. I mean, they're making these iconic rock songs. Some of them are getting on MTV. Rainbow in the Dark's a big song for them. Apparently one that Ronnie was ready to rip up. Like they're listening to it on the playback. He's like, I'm going to take this razor blade and I'm going to cut that out. And they're like, no, dude, that's awesome. Don't do that. He's like, I thank them every day for that. But Stand Up and Shout was big for him. Holy Diver, the title track, big, And then look, the last in line, and they did a big thing on the photo shoot for Holy Diver, right? As far as the cover goes, and the priest splashing around in chains underneath the thing. They had the photographer there and his visual effects guy, the artist that did it. It's crazy. But what did Ronnie call the devil? What was the cute name he had for that?
It's Murray.
Murray.
Yeah.
He calls that guy Murray.
His name's Murray, right? The one thing that I really liked about when they were talking about Holy Diver is that he said he went into some horrible place, the shed or something at his house or the basement or something. It was just some real Spartan place. And he just took the bass and he made up what would become Holy Diver. And then Vinny said they recorded originally just the two of them, drums and bass and the vocals. And then, just to hear how that came along, they were talking about, what was it? Where were they? The sound stage or something where they would just mess around, and just the band when they got together and just,
was it Sound City?
Sound City, that's what it was.
Yeah.
You drink, you play pinball, you'd fool around, and then they were doing Rainbow in the Dark, and it was just the guitar part, and Jimmy gets up. He said he had the cigarette hanging out of it. The ash was as long as the cigarette. He just gets up and he just plays the keyboard part, right there. Bump, 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 bump. And they went, whoa. Yeah. He said the cigarette didn't even move the whole time. Just to have that, hey, I got an idea. Let's put this in. That's what needs to be in there.
Yeah. And so those four did so well in those first three records, selling, more than 4 million in the US and, lots more around the world. And they get to go on tour, and on tour, they can squeeze in some other Dio songs. They can do stuff like Stargazer if they want to, or Man on the Silver Mountain and things like that. So they start the headline, and dude, they put together this killer stage show, which by 1985-86 included this laser sword where he actually slays the big dragon with it and stuff like that. I think I have a VHS my friend J-Lo gave me somewhere on that. I don't know if I could play it on anything anymore, but at any rate, I mean, it was worth the price of admission, right? They were going to give the fans a lot of bang for the buck, big stage, big effects, pyro, stuff like that. He really helped bring the heavy metal show into the 80s.
Yeah, because by this point in time, Kiss they're
done.
Yeah, I mean, they were still around, but not like that, not like the over the top. Like they still had pyro, but they didn't have the stage stuff like he had.
That's right. They reinvented themselves, taking the makeup off in the mid 80s there. So yeah, no, you're right. And they still had a big bombastic stage show, but it wasn't quite the same. And so, yeah, Dio was the one kind of taking it to that next level. Okay, so we've got all that. So apparently what he said to everybody in the band was, guys, first two albums, you're going to get a per diem, or you're going to get whatever we can get.
Right.
Probably going to be much, but stick around. And by the third album, it'll be an equity thing. Mm-hmm. And Vivian remembered this conversation. And he said, hey, Ronnie, remember when you said da-da-da? Well, I think it's time for that. He's like, yeah, sure. You have any songs? Well, no, Ronnie, I don't have any songs, but I want to know, am I going to get paid for my time? Because he's a hot shot. I mean, he is in demand. He has options if he leaves. And I think Ronnie eventually kind of took it the wrong way, maybe. He's like, who's this kid who I've given a chance to, who I've made world famous? Not to mention, he's like, hey, look, I know how this business works because I got screwed in Rainbow and I got screwed in Black Sabbath, and I'm not getting screwed again. At this point, he's in his 40s and he's paid his dues. And he's got this kid who he's made a star saying, give me more. And he's like, no, I'm not going to do it.
But here's where I go back to my human nature comment from before. Now he's Blackmore. Now he's Iommi saying the same thing. Who is this snot-nosed little kid? I took you, and I know that's what Blackmore said. I took you from nothing and made you this huge star, and now you think you're in charge? Get out of here. And Iommi, to some point, and that's just the way it goes. You have this guy who he can't be contained, I guess, and he's not happy with being an employee. He wants to be, a full-fledged member of the band. And I think it had this was Campbell's account of this. He said it had everything to do with Wendy, and she thought that they were just monkeys. The rest, it was Ronnie was the star and then 3 other guys. And it could be, if you don't want to play ball, I'll get somebody else that looks just like you, plays exactly the same thing, get out of here. Where Campbell's thing was, we're all writing these songs together. This is a band thing. It's not like Ronnie's just coming with this music. So this is the part where it always falls apart when it comes to money.
Yeah, and here's the thing. Ronnie and Wendy they kind of broke up a little bit. They didn't get divorced, but they kind of separated and they had issues and stuff like that. Meanwhile, she's still managing him. I mean, they've been managing him since the 70s, right? Managing the band. And so they're having trouble, and now all of a sudden the band's having some trouble. I think they just kind of saw it as, we'll get back together, we'll repair this partnership and marriage of ours. And in doing so, the casualty is going to be Vivian Campbell and basically anybody else who kind of gets in the way.
Right. And what I didn't realize too was that I knew that Wendy was his manager for all those years, but I never realized that according to the movie, she basically said that he came home one day and said, now you're going to manage the band. Mm-hmm. And was like, well, okay, like, do I know how to do that? Is this going to be cool? Right. No, you'll be fine. Do it. And that put a lot of pressure on her to kind of just really step up and take on that role that maybe she wasn't 100% comfortable with. And like you were saying, that led to problems in the marriage. You can't have that much exposure to one person. You've got to have some kind of separation.
Right. Yeah. Separation of church and state, as I like to call it. Yeah, absolutely. During COVID, when we were working at different jobs, but we're working in the same house all day. It's right. Like, oh, we need something to change here.
Right. And now imagine all of that, and your wife is also technically your boss.
Right.
Okay, cool. Add that to the mix. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, and how did she learn to do that? Well, she was a waitress at the Rainbow. Oh, well, by all means, she should be, managing a multi-million-dollar multinational band. Of course she should, right? Well, exactly. She grew into it, I guess.
Right. Well, no, she rose to the occasion. And managed him, I think, quite well. But it was just like that. I can't imagine that you're just doing this now. Okay, I guess this is how this is happening.
So, but look, people leave bands all the time. And, eventually Vivian went into Whitesnake, and that wasn't all bad for him, and eventually he got the Def Leppard gig. What I didn't love to see was when Ronnie was in Heaven and Hell and somebody asked him about Vivian Campbell, he was like, because Ronnie would always, and they showed it in the film, Ronnie would always stay late to sign autographs and answer questions. And sometimes his recall was remarkable. Like he'd see a fan 2 years later and be like, hey, the last time I saw you, your dad was sick. How's he doing? Kind of thing. But yeah, and someone's asking him about Vivian Campbell and he's just talking about what a just low-life piece of shit that he is. And I'm like, whoa, really? That's just so uncharacteristic of Ronnie. Even if somebody he doesn't like, he usually dresses it up a little bit, or he's pretty diplomatic. Not to mention, he's usually pretty positive about most everybody that he's worked with, But, oh my God, dude, just ripping it. And then he was ripping Def Leppard. It's like, oh, you want to go see that candy-ass band? Yeah, go right ahead. I'm like, well, they've outsold you, Ronnie. Maybe they're not the same genre but record sales and ticket sales, they can kind of dust you there. So show a little respect.
But I think that goes back to his stance that he basically not created, but he helped this guy by giving him this big opportunity. And basically I guess Ronnie felt like he spit it back in his face and was totally ungrateful. And yeah, that was weird because I remember when he passed, there was no one, even Campbell wouldn't say anything. Mm-hmm. Like he said something like we had our disagreements or something like that. Like he didn't badmouth him. There was nobody that had a bad word to say about Ronnie. Not one single person.
That's exactly right. Everybody was pretty positive on, what a great guy he was. So, and obviously Vivian had business issues.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
With Ronnie, but I don't think he disliked it until it was like, but then they started sniping each other in press. And when that starts to happen, you read about it and Kerrang's like, oh, well, he said that about me. Well, let me tell you something about him that you might not know, and then it gets kind of ugly, but that's just, it's not called music friends. It's called music business.
Unfortunately, there was a great, they didn't have it in the movie, but there was a great clip from Dave Mustaine talking about when he first started Megadeth, they went on tour with Dio as the opener. Mm-hmm. And he took Ronnie aside one night and he said, I just want to tell you, I can't thank you enough for this opportunity. And Ronnie being Ronnie was like, hey, I can't thank you enough for bringing all these young fans and really pumping the crowd up. I really, it's great. Dave says to him, you don't understand. I cannot thank you enough for this. And then Ronnie said, okay, we could sit here and jerk each other off all night, or we could go smoke a joint. And,
Yes, exactly.
Okay, let's go.
It's like 10 minutes before the show, and he's talking to somebody. He's like, "Well, do you need to warm up your voice?" He's like, "No, man, I'm ready to go." He's just having a glass of wine. No, let's talk until it's 1 minute to go on. Like, are you kidding me? You can belt that out, that huge sound out of you. It's unbelievable.
And going back to those the original tapes that Vinny had, that there was that demo tape that he played on a cassette. He was like, it was a jam or something. So and to hear him sing, basically totally unfiltered, raw on the tape it was amazing to hear him.
Well, yeah, and to hear the producers say, "Hey, Ronnie, just give me one vocal track. I can let them play. If we're trying to get 5, 6, 10, 12 takes, I can let them play to the same track." He's like, "No, I'm going to sing with the band." So he would do that. Nobody does that, man. Right. Nobody does that because it's too hard. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I'm really glad that because I've seen it before, but I'm really glad they put in that Tenacious D clip where he goes in. Yeah, where he goes in, they're like, he brings his microphone and they're like, "Dude, this is state of the art. Like we don't need anything." And he blows the mics out. Right. And then he's like, "Yeah, that's why I bring this one." But the thing is, to what I really love about that is when he gets done with the take, to see the look on Jack Black and everybody else's face, like, I can't believe we just watched that happen live. Like, it was just, because you figure after a while, if you're a big time producer, like, you're just like, whatever, just, record, stop, record. But to stop for a minute and just have that wide eyed look like that, there's no way that just happened live. Yeah, dude, you just saw the legend belt it out for you. And then he's like, was that good? Did you need something else? I can do it a different way. Just real humble.
Hi, I'm Paul Stevenson from Vintage Rock Pod, and you're listening to The Ugly American Werewolf in London.
And then, another thing that I don't think he gets enough credit for is the stars thing.
Okay.
Because, in heavy metal circles he does. But the fact of the matter is, when they did that USA for Africa thing and Feed the World, yes, you saw a lot of MTV favorites on there and multi-platinum, super duper uber stars, right? Mm-hmm. But you didn't see any hard rock people. They were all left out and marginalized. Like, oh no, you may be good enough to tour arenas and sell a lot of records, but you're not good enough to join.
To be here.
Bob Dylan and Cyndi Lauper, you're not. So they put together their own with a lot of wailing. There's a lot of guitar solos on there and 8 different lead singers, if I'm not mistaken. But like you said, Rob Halford, the metal god, the legend, is on there. And Ronnie's like, you can do that better. He's like, yeah, okay, yeah, like, you're right. I will, sir. Thank you. Yeah. It's another thing with Don Dokken. He's like, all right, Dokken rhymes with rockin'. I'm not so sure. He's like, no, dude, I'm nervous. I want to, I love you, and I just want to do great for you. He's like, good man. Now let's get back to it.
Right. But the other cool part was they showed the clip after that where he grabbed him and he threw his arm around his shoulder and said, "Hey, great job. I really appreciate you coming out." That was Ronnie. And I didn't realize or I didn't put 2 and 2 together that basically in the Sunset Strip days, like the Motley Crue days, and he was the godfather. Everybody looked up to him. Yeah. So when he did that stars thing, whenever you need me, I'm all there today.
Yeah. Yeah. Can I even get all the right singers? I'm not even so sure I can.
Good luck. Cause there's a couple, you can get some, but you're not going to get all of them. Cause there's a couple that are like, ooh, I kind of know you.
Kevin Dubrow of Quiet Riot. Ronnie, obviously. Rob Halford, obviously. Don Dokken, obviously. That's half of them. Jeff Tate from Queensryche, I think, was one of them.
I saw him there, yeah. And then probably somebody like Ronnie Keel, or somebody of that ilk was there that maybe was hot at that time. But one thing I was wondering about that USA for Africa, like, why did you tell Ronnie no? Did you tell him because he didn't fit in? He wasn't cool? Or did you maybe think that his vocals would kind of eclipse everybody else's? Just curious.
Yeah. Interesting question. All right, Eric Bloom from Blue Oyster Cult, which I never really got. We knew Don Dokken was there. Mm-hmm. Dave Meniketti from Y&T, one of Eddie Trunk's favorite, most overlooked, I think for our buddy Sonny Pooney too. And Paul Shortino from Rough Cut, which is, I think that's where Craig Goldie came from before he joined.
Oh, maybe,
Ronnie's band. But then in the background, they've got everybody kind of screaming along. But, Buck Dharma, also Blue Oyster Cult, is there. Brad Gillis of Night Ranger is there. They got Yngwie is there. The guys from Spinal Tap. Vince Neil Vince Neil didn't get to sing lead, but he got to sing in the background, and that's probably good for everybody.
Probably. That was a funny clip I forgot with what's his name from Spinal Tap. He's talking about how I just met Yngwie J. Malmsteen. I'm glad that he puts the J in there so that I don't get him confused with the other Yngwie Malmsteen.
That's a good line. No doubt about it. Yeah, no, it shows that he had this power for sure, but he didn't just use it to enrich himself. He used it to help people. And that's, I think, the overlapping theme of the story is that, he was this genuine, hardworking person who was generous of spirit, generous of time. And he put a lot of positive, look, when I saw him and when you see him on the videos, all he ever says to the crowd is thank you. Thank you. Thank you. He's in heaven and hell touring with Dio as Black Sabbath together apart. Thank you for your support. Thank you. We love you. He was always appreciative of the crowd.
Yeah. And appreciative with his time. And they had that story about the guy on the water tower. And he, came from the airport to talk to this guy because they thought he was going to hurt himself or something. He knew why he was there, and he knew how to connect with the crowd. And it was interesting too, because you can see him when you look at the video of live performances. He locks eyes with people and he gives them he gives you the devil horns, not just like, oh, hey, whatever. Like, so you feel like, he's looking at me. He remembers me. He understands how to connect and what he needs to do as a performer to get the crowd into it.
And, another thing I want to give him a lot of credit for is that getting into the mid and then the late 90s, when this kind of music was kind of given the cold shoulder by record companies, the grunge thing had kind of taken over that hard rock medium, right? Away from the kind of classic metal bands. And what I liked about the movies, Eddie Trunk talking about how one day it's like all these that you listen to, those are out. You got to play all this. Here's the Smashing Pumpkins. Here's all this. And it's like, that's great if it gets rid of Loverboy and Poison and bands we don't really need anyway. But it got rid of all the great bands of that genre as well. It's like they're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. It all has to go. So suddenly he can't play arenas anymore, and he's got to play theaters and clubs and stuff like that. But he did it. He kept going out and doing it. And I give the same credit to Steve Harris and the Iron Maiden guys, who I saw in a club in the Shade. I think it was the Shades nightclub. It was one of those places in Jacksonville when they had Blaze as their lead singer. And, they could have said, look, if we can't sell out at least theaters in America, we're not going to do it. That's beneath us, and we're Iron Maiden. We go tour other parts of the world and sell out. They're like, no, we signed up for this a long time ago, and if we need to build it back up, this is what we're going to do. And that's what Ronnie did. He went back and just kept at it, right? Just kept at it. And I'm also glad of the whole heaven and hell thing. They tried to get back together. I mean, they did the Computer God record in 92 or whatever it was, got a song into the Wayne's World.
Yeah, as Black Sabbath though, right?
As Black Sabbath.
Yeah, okay.
Got back in with Black Sabbath, but it was kind of just not great timing. And I do believe it wasn't too long after that Ozzy kind of got back with Sabbath.
Right, because then they started doing that. Yeah, once the Ozfest thing came along, and then Black Sabbath, or his Black Sabbath, was the headliner to most of them, or at least the co-headliner. Yeah, that unfortunately I think Ronnie got pushed out again. Right, but then they knew we were going to be taking a break from Sabbath. They knew we were going to take a break from Ozzy. They got back together and said, well, do you want to try to do something again? And they did. They went out and toured, and then they made another album together, which is awesome. And I was just so glad I got to see it, because those songs that you listen to, and I listened to Heaven and Hell and Mob Rules together back to back, kind of like Asian Alpha. I always just kind of listen to them together. I always listen to Heaven and Hell and Mob Rules back to back. And then to hear, that's most of their set. They have a couple of new songs, but that's most of their set. And to see those perform live on a big stage, in an amphitheater, in an arena, it was so, so very cool. And I know that they all felt good about being back on top again. Yeah, and exposing that to a new generation, but also letting people come back and see these songs again. Because, like we talked about, even the Ozzy Black Sabbath is never going to touch any of the Ronnie stuff. So if he's in the band, if that's the band, all Ronnie stuff is out. Yeah, no, I think in the movie, Wendy said they decided to call it Heaven and Hell. Well, they didn't decide. They couldn't call it Black Sabbath, because once they got Black Sabbath Original 4 back together, Sharon put it in there that
you can't call any other iteration Black Sabbath, unless Bill needs to sit out, and then we can get a replacement for Bill. But you can't have Black Sabbath without Ozzy, is basically what she did.
Which, that's Sharon looking out for her.
That's right.
Her star. So yeah, I don't have any problem with that. And actually, I mean, I think we talked about this when we reviewed Heaven and Hell. There's a case to be made that they should have just changed the name when they put that record out and just been a completely different band.
Well,
I mean, it goes both ways, but I mean, because it was so different.
I know, but the record company's also like, you got this great big brand that we can sell.
Correct.
Let's call it Black Sabbath.
Well, and the thing is, I'm sure Tony Iommi was in the same thing. This is my band. I don't care who left. I am Black Sabbath as long as I'm here. So yeah, I see why they did that. But it was kind of cool because, well, I didn't realize that in Heaven and Hell, Bill was not in that. It was Vinny. So it was basically the Mob Rules lineup. So yeah, that was
That's
cool.
right. Or the Live Evil lineup. But yeah, absolutely. And it's just good to see that they kind of reconciled and obviously got great success out of it. And obviously it was sad when obviously then Ronnie gets sick, and I mean, it was, I guess it's great to see some of that behind the scenes stuff and to see him in the hospital bed and talking about how he's going to make it and things like that. But that's tough. And then you see Eddie crying and Wendy crying and people, it still affects you all these years later. And after 3 beers, I was starting to get a little bit, damn it. Why do you have to, I'm like, all right, keep it together.
I didn't realize it had been that long since he had died, but I mean, he died in 2010. So yeah,
years.
And the whole thing about the clip of the Golden Gods Award where they're like, okay, he's looking good. He's gotten treatment. They gave him the experimental stuff. So yeah, he looks really good. I think we've turned the corner, and then now that wasn't it at all.
I know. And nothing lasts forever. Not all these rock stars are going to live to be really old. And the fact that all 4 original members of Black Sabbath are still alive is just unbelievable to me.
That defies.
I don't get it. Odds. It makes no sense. Whereas, other people obviously don't make it quite as long. But I just think it's an incredible legacy to leave behind. And he was so underappreciated. Like, we talk about Rainbow. Rainbow's bigger in Japan than like the Rolling Stones are. They're huge. They're huge in Europe, but they can't crack the U.S. And that's why Ritchie wanted to bring in Graham Bonnet, and get some commercial stuff going. Black Sabbath hits it big with Ronnie, but they still got their issues, and they're not quite as big as they used to be in Europe and that kind of thing. And Ronnie's like, I paid my dues. Once I get my own band, I'm not giving it up. And he didn't, and good for him for knowing that, hey, this is what I need to do for me. The Red Caps were great, but they didn't make me any money. The Electric Elves were great, but I'm not getting any royalties for any of that. Rainbow may have been iconic, but I'm not getting paid for that. Once I get my own thing, I got to hold on to that. And he did.
Right. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I can't remember who brought it up about how they compared him to Ali, like the 3-time world champion and three different eras. So like, yeah, you're right. I mean, he was huge in Rainbow. He brought Black Sabbath back from the abyss, and then he started his own band. And yeah, I like you said, when he was in charge, I mean, at this point in time, he was well into his 40s in the 80s. I mean, he was 40 in 82. Yeah, I'm not giving this up. And I'm sorry, Vivian Campbell, but this is my money now.
Yeah, go join your own band, man. Go make your own thing, because I'm doing this, and it says Dio on the top of the bill.
Correct. That is correct. Let me just check that real quick. Oh yes, it doesn't say the Dio band. It just says
Dio. That's right. So God rest you, Ronnie. I just one of my great honors to see you play live. I will never stop listening to, and the first 3 Rainbow records, man, I could put those 3 together too and listen to that. You can take a nice long 1.5, 2-hour hike. You can listen to all 3 of those back to back. It's pretty great. I don't know. I don't know that we'll ever find another person with the voice and the connection like Ronnie ever again.
I don't think so. And I think he was just a special person in general. At the end when Eddie was talking about, crying about him having the cancer diagnosis and Ronnie like lifting him up, like, no, it's going to be okay. Like he was just that kind of guy. And like I said, when he died, no one had a bad word to say. They're all like, oh, I can't wait to tell you my Ronnie story about how I knew him and, how we hung out together and the fun that we had. And there's really nobody else like that. I don't care anybody else. You're going to find a couple of people that are like, nah, this guy was a jerk. Right. No one ever had a bad word to say about him because he was just I think he knew what he wanted to do. He knew what he had to do in his life, and he was going to do it. And he was going to encourage people to do the same thing. Follow, you got a dream, follow your dream. Don't let anybody tell you that you can't do this. I know you can.
Yeah. And when, his bandmates, whether it be Ritchie Blackmore or the label in the late 80s or the early 90s, like, okay, things are changing. Now you got to do something else. He's like, no, I'm not singing about, I'm singing about mystical dreams and things like that. I'm not singing about my girlfriend or whatever, that kind of thing. It's an otherworldly experience. It's what I want to do. I'm not chasing that gold album or that, top 40 hit. I'm going to do music that I love, and then we're going to take it on the road and we're going to deliver it every night. And that's what he did basically till the day he died.
And there was a line in there, and I can't remember who said it, but something about how his music, he was never the victim in his music. He was more the sage. Like he was telling you a story. It wasn't like, I'm down. I've got the blues. My baby done left me. It was always like, the positive message and moving forward. And I think that connected with a lot of people.
Absolutely, man. People just love the guy. And Eddie Trunk because he used to do that metal show on VH1 Classic. And once he passed away, he basically did a tribute to Ronnie and had a lot of people out. He had Craig Goldie on to play guitar. Everyone's dressed in black, and just everyone's talking about memories and how, you could have met him in the Rainbow in 1978, and then you didn't see him again until 1983, and he'd be like, oh, Jackson, how you doing, man? Is your band still going? He just had that effect on people. Just a special human being. Like you said, the only person who really didn't like him, besides Sharon Osbourne maybe, was Vivian. But I think once Ronnie died, Vivian kind of put it to rest. And, he and Vinny and Jimmy Bain did start the whole...
they do the Dio Disciples.
Right, now. They kind of do their own thing now. And
even did he not really like him, or was it just a disagreement about money? Like, I don't think he ever said, Ronnie's a jerk, I don't like him. I think he was just mad that he wasn't getting paid what he thought he was going to get paid, or what he was entitled to get paid.
Well, right. I mean, and then, like I said, the sniping starts in the press, and then you do say stuff that pisses somebody else off or gets personal or whatever.
Yeah.
But at the end, once he's gone, it's like there's no reason to hold a grudge anymore. And things kind of worked out for everybody in the end. I mean, to be honest with you.
Right. Correct.
I mean, Vivian went on to have a big career outside of Dio. They did Last in Line band with Jimmy Bain, Vinny Appice, and I think their singer's name is Andrew Freeman, trying to do songs in the vein of that 83, 84, 85 Dio. Kind of like the Classic 78 guys. Did you hear the Shout Out Loud cast with the Classic 78 guys?
I did, yeah. That was very interesting.
Well, that was our take on the Ronnie James Dio biopic Dreamers Never Die that we saw one night only. For Jackson, it was Jacksonville. He gets his own Ville. He's so cool. For me, it was Amsterdam at the Pathé Arena. It was fun to be there. It's fun that they offer you ceramic top grolsch in the lobby along with your popcorn. I think that was a great part of it. But honestly, it's just great to see Ronnie again. I'm glad he finally got the treatment that he deserves in a documentary like this to chronicle his life and his amazing career. We may not have gone in depth on the movie as far as every scene and everything he did growing up. Obviously, it gets interesting once he's in Elf and then Rainbow and Black Sabbath and then going on to become the man we know as Ronnie James Dio with all those big hits from the 80s, all the tours, all the people who loved him, and I include myself among them. When I got to see Heaven and Hell, I didn't catch on till Black Sabbath on the Ronnie James Dio era until later in life. I was about 30 years old. And so once that happened, I'm like, wow, I wonder if they'd ever tour like this again. It didn't look good because Ozzy was monopolizing Black Sabbath, and we understand that. It's a big brand, and they have a lot of money to make on the Ozfest and things like that. I was just hoping one day we would see them play these songs again. When they did Heaven and Hell, I was so fortunate. I saw them twice. I could have seen them 50 times. I loved it so much. I'm just so happy that they actually went out there and showed those songs off. It was very special to me. And the movie is killer. It's got a lot of folks in it. You got your Lita Fords in there. You got the voice of rock. Glenn Hughes is in there. Eddie Trunk's in there, Mick Wall, the surviving members of Black Sabbath minus Ozzy, basically all his bandmates except Vivian Campbell. And hey, look, we know he got into it with Vivian. He and Vivian then started sniping in the press, and that's never good for anybody. I do hope they resolve their differences because Ronnie's gone now. There's nothing we can do about it. But this movie is a great way to remember him. It was a great night out for me, and I think you'd like it too. I have a feeling that it will be out on DVD by the holidays. It really ought to be. If not, it'll be streaming by then, and then maybe you'll get to own it physically in the coming year. But love Ronnie James Dio, and you can check out our show number 13 on the Dio years of Black Sabbath. Of course, they just announced that they're going to be doing a 40th anniversary edition of Heaven and Hell and the Mob Rules. And even though I might have the 20th edition and the 30th edition, I got a feeling I'll be buying the 40th editions as soon as they're available in November. You can check that out wherever you get your records. Two of my favorite metal albums of all time, and they're great back-to-back. Yes, there's a drummer change between Bill Ward to Vinny Appice between those two, but honestly, great hard rock, great heavy metal, classic Black Sabbath, great Ronnie. Love those albums, love them to bits. So, as usual, folks, we want to know, did we get something right? Did we get something wrong? Did we miss the point? Did we leave out your favorite part? You have got to let us know. You can contact us at uglyamericanwerewolf@gmail.com. You can also tweet us or DM us at ugly_werewolf, at actionjack72. We're also on Instagram. We're also on YouTube. And if you're listening to this, we're also going to be in Indianapolis on Friday, October 14th, Close Hall, to see Nick Mason's Saucer Full of Secrets. And if you want to win VIP experience, front row tickets, probably a little late for the indie show if you're listening to this, but go to www.pantheonpodcast.com/Nick Mason, and you can enter to win on the Midwest and West Coast shows. It's going to be a special night. We are really, really looking forward to it. A very special thanks to our friends at Pantheon Podcast for helping us along. And, of course, special thanks to our amazing sponsor, rarevinyl.com, or you can go to EIL.com, but go there to find the classic vintage albums in mint condition that you're looking for. Be sure to use code PODCAST, PODCAST, to get 10% off not only your first order, but every order that ships all around the world. Next week, well, we're going to be wrapping up our time in Indianapolis with Nick Mason's Saucer Full of Secrets. So expect me and Jackson to have a review of the show. We might have some snippets of the show in there. We might have some snippets from talking to some fans. Hopefully someone will win the VIP contest. Maybe they'll want to be on our show. Who knows? But we're looking forward to it. I can't wait to be back in the States. I haven't been to America in, I think it's been 16 months since I've been in my home country. Lots going on with me, but just looking forward to it in a big way. So, to all you rock and rollers all around the world, until next time, be cool and stay safe.